I finally did that task that I'd been putting off for 7 months, and it took me 12 minutes. There's that quiet resistance that feels disproportionate to what the actual task is.
I was thinking over the weekend, and I know we were talking about this as well. We talk about it a lot. Is motivation. You're really into your physical fitness. You're really into your health. You're really into all that stuff, and you do a great job staying consistent on it, even when you don't like to. If you know me, I used to be pretty big into fitness as well. I worked out,
Religiously.
Yeah. Six days a week.
Yeah.
Had
Never
my
skipped
rest.
leg day?
Never skipped leg day.
Never.
Ever. I could bench not bench. I could squat like 700 pounds.
I'm on this is really digressing here. I'm part of a physical fitness coaching program, and on there, some people must have asked the coach that I follow to add some core days onto non-leg days. And these people unashamedly admitted that they never do leg day. And the coach essentially, the coach went on and he said, I am absolutely not going to put any core exercises on any day other than leg day. There's no reason to be skipping leg day. So he really called a bunch of people out. But it's tough to start stuff.
Right? That's what I was going to say. I mean, it was such a big part of my life for many years. And then, I mean, I don't even want to say COVID was the excuse. It wasn't. It was. My life just got really busy, and when COVID happened and everything shut down, you and I went on a mission to make sure that we could equip our home gyms.
That's right.
So we could keep on packing on the pounds and you're packing on the muscle and getting the strength.
We all packed on some other kind of pounds during COVID.
That is true. But
you're tapping into something that's common for a lot of us. And it's not just starting an exercise program. That's an easy one to pick on, like I always say. But there's always that resistance to starting the term paper or starting to study for a big exam. Starting is always a challenge. And there's always that moment before every beginning where you feel like there's a quiet resistance that feels kind of disproportionate to what the actual task is. I was on Facebook this morning, and there was a meme on there of someone just joking around saying, I finally did that task that I'd been putting off for 7 months, and it took me 12 minutes. And then he said, I learned absolutely nothing from this. And, but it's just kind of that starting, there's that quiet resistance that feels disproportionate to what the actual task is. For example, the gym bag is packed, but it's still on the floor, or the blank page on a computer in front of you for a project that you have to do that's open.
Why is it so hard for me to start back up again?
Well, I'm going to make an unusual argument. We talk a lot about motivation, or there's a lot of talk out there about motivation, about productivity, and about how to motivate yourself to do things. There's motivational speakers, there's books about motivation, but I want to kind of flip it on its end. And it's not that any of us are lazy. I would argue that it's physics is the reason why it's a challenge to start things. It's even more so is psychological physics, and I'll kind of talk about that in a bit.
Interesting.
But I want to talk about why starting any project actually drains energy. Okay, when we start something or when we initiate a task, it actually drains physical energy from our bodies. It takes a lot of energy for our brain to work. And when we start something new or begin a process or begin a project or whatever that may be, that actually drains our energy. And so the whole goal with really starting is to figure out how do we make that initial energy drain of starting, how do we make it lighter? So if motivation does feel unreliable, maybe it's because we're trying to summon that motivation before we move. So today I want to kind of flip that script a little bit. Okay.
Right.
So first I want to talk about why beginnings feel heavy. Okay. What I would tell people and tell you and remind everyone is that the idea of the difficulty starting is a universal psychological pattern that we all have. I would argue that we're all procrastinators. It's just that some of us have learned how to not procrastinate better than others. So there's this universal psychological pattern rather than a personal flaw that we all have. And I'm going to talk about it in context of two concepts, at least for this initial part, and that's behavioral activation is one, and then task initiation is another one. And those are going to be kind of scientific anchors that we're going to be talking about today.
Sure,
okay?
Yeah.
Do you know what either of those are, John? Do you know what behavioral activation or task initiation is? You don't have to, because I'm going to tell you.
Task activation is just starting to do the thing, right?
Essentially.
And
Yep.
behavioral activation, I would assume. I mean, I'm not looking at the notes.
Yeah, you are. I'm kidding.
I haven't looked at this part yet. I promise.
Okay.
So I'm trying to be. I'm trying to be the common man
Sure.
as much as I can.
Yeah.
I think behavioral activation is like after you get started, you start to feel like, hey, I'm starting to feel good about this. I'm starting to feel more motivation. Like you want to continue doing the thing, or am I way off?
You're similar. You're kind of putting the cart before the horse a little bit.
That's part of my life, though.
But you're on the right track. You're on the right track.
Okay.
Behavioral activation is actually it's a form of treatment for depression. Okay.
Really?
So if you talk to any therapist that's got good foundational cognitive behavioral therapy or treatment background, they'll tell you all day about behavioral activation. Just go down the hall and talk to Danny. She'll talk to you about behavioral activation all day. What it is, it's based on a simple premise, and that is when we act as if we have energy or interest, we often create those feelings through the action itself.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
So let me say that again. If we act as if we have energy or interest, we often create those feelings through the action itself. What the research finds is that behavioral activation is very effective in starting to alleviate depression. It's not going to make it go away completely, but it's a process of treatment, right? It's a part of treatment. What we find is that when we engage in an activity and we pretend as if we have energy and interest and act as if we do, that action creates feelings just by and of itself of doing the action. It's very, very important to note because we can really harness that to solve this problem of starting anything, whether it's learning something new or reading a new book or studying for a test or starting an exercise program, whatever it may be. We can harness that idea of if we start moving, the emotions follow. So it's important to note that the human reward system is motion sensitive. And I've talked about it before, and we've talked about it a little bit, and that our brains are based on our brains are based on movement. Just as our bodies thrive on movement, our brains are actually also moving all the time. Yep. Electrical impulses bouncing back and forth all the time. What's important to note is that dopamine, which is that that hormone that gives us that feel-good feeling or that sense of reward and satisfaction, dopamine spikes after we start, not before. The problem is that we often find ourselves waiting for that motivation, for that feeling of motivation that we get from dopamine. So it's like waiting. It's like you're trying to start a fire with a match, but you're going to wait for the heat to get there first. It doesn't make any sense, right? But you would never try to start a fire that way. You would never wait for heat to come before striking a fire to light a campfire, right?
It just makes perfect sense.
You just got to do it. Yeah, right. So we have to understand that sense of motivation actually builds after action is started. It's very rare to be motivated at the onset of a task. Sometimes you are. Maybe you're excited to do it, whatever. But we all have those situations which we have a task that we have to do and there's no motivation. But we find is that the motivation and that feel-good feeling from the motivation comes after we start something. So in behavioral activation, what clients do is they identify small values-based actions and then schedule them even when the mood is low. And that's a lot of times where the challenge is starting even though we don't feel like starting.
Right.
We have to act as if we want to start in order to get that sense of motivation. But the magic isn't in forcing yourself to move, right? It's in realizing that mood will follow the movement. And when we realize that, it's much easier to get over that hump of starting.
Because you know what's coming afterwards.
Right. So I want you to kind of think about, and I think we've all kind of had these experiences, and that is think of the last time like you didn't want to go to the gym, or you didn't want to send that email, or you didn't want to make the call. And then 5 minutes into actually doing the task, you notice the resistance fading. That's behavioral activation at work. It's motion rewiring mood in real time. And so when we think of it in that way, we can actually manipulate our emotions to start feeling better, even when we don't want to do something.
So like to be work related, I'm working on finalizing a policy right now that we need to implement. And I absolutely dread it. I cannot stand writing policies.
Yeah.
I can't stand editing them. So what you're saying is I should be like, okay, I get to work on this policy. I get to finalize it.
Yeah.
And I get to send it out to the
Drum
rest of the
yourself up.
team, and it's just going to be great. I
Yeah.
can't wait to get my fingers on the keyboard to start clacking away.
Right. Exactly. That's behavioral activation.
That could apply towards like going to the gym or
Exactly.
anything else.
Yep.
Yeah.
That is one of the most research-supported interventions for depression, is that behavioral activation. Yet what most people will tell you is that it's deceptively simple, and that's simply do the next small thing.
Right.
That's behavioral activation.
I
Okay.
think that's why it's kind of so hard, is because it's so easy to do. It's also so easy not to do.
Yeah, it's very easy, and I'll talk about. Actually, I'm going to talk about that
Okay,
as to
all
why it's hard.
Okay.
But first, I want to talk about the next concept that we're going to be kind of anchoring in for today, and that is task initiation. Okay. Task initiation is that mental step between intending and doing. It kind of requires its own skill set. All right, it's not automatic.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to talk about task initiation in terms of executive functioning, which is the ability to begin a task promptly without excessive procrastination. All right, that's task initiation at its core. Okay. What the way it works is that the brain's prefrontal cortex must transition from idea to motor plan or movement, which means that overcoming uncertainty, planning load, and emotional friction all have to be dealt with in some way, shape, or form. Okay. Now, if we look at it clinically, without going too deep into it, people like with ADHD or high anxiety often struggle not because they're unmotivated, but because their activation threshold is higher. Okay. Which means
interesting.
it takes more work for them to get there, so
Sure.
to speak. So starting a task in and of itself and acknowledging so helps remove some of that shame associated with being unable to start a task. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then what we find is that once initiated, momentum and focus increase, right, as dopamine and norepinephrine rise. So as we start a task and start working on it and see ourselves starting to progress towards completion, we get an increase in dopamine and another hormone called norepinephrine. Those rise, which produces the I'm finally doing it relief that we feel when we're actually engaging in a task.
You have that reward reflex, or
Yep.
is that what that is? It's kind of like a reward reflex.
Exactly.
Or?
It's the reward circuits in our brain that's being
Jeez.
activated.
Hmm.
Okay. So the other thing I want people to understand is that the trick isn't to summon motivation. It's to lower the entry barrier. Okay. So the trick is not to figure out how to find your motivation. It's to lower the entry barrier to starting a task. That's why something as small as opening up that Word document on your computer, setting a timer, writing the first word in an essay or paper that you need to write, or the policy that you need to make, can collapse that what I call psychological distance between intention and action. The biggest barrier to motivation is to get from intention to actually doing what you say you're going to do.
Oh, true that.
You know,
True that.
The heaviness of starting isn't weakness. I just want to tell people that. So it's something that we all face. All right. So the heaviness of starting isn't a weakness for us, but it's your brain hesitating. I call it at the edge of uncertainty.
Sure.
All right. Behavioral activation kind of gives it a shove to go forward, and then task initiation keeps it moving once it tips. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Do you know what that hesitation is? Like, why would we? I mean, if we know that, okay, going to the gym, starting that project, doing the thing that we know is going to help us, like scheduling out your day.
Sure.
That's immensely helpful.
Yep.
Why? I mean, we rationally know that it's good for us, but actually getting our minds and our bodies to do the thing is really hard, despite rationally knowing the benefits.
Right.
Like, what is that?
So
all
we've talked
about?
before about how our brains are set up to protect ourselves, right? They're designed to protect us, and they're constantly scanning for threat. Well, task initiation or engaging in a project is actually, the brain perceives it as a threat to stability, right? It doesn't perceive it as a threat to you're going to be in danger. It sees it as a threat to stability.
Because it's
right?
new and different.
It's new and different. So it's easy, if you frame it in that context, it's easier to see why we slip into what I call avoidance loops. So that actually is a great transition to this next area we want to talk about, which is the cognitive science of inertia. Now, you know what inertia is, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's the
An object in
concept
motion stays in motion.
and an object at rest tends to stay at rest.
Right.
Okay, that's really that's what inertia is, and it's the same thing with our brains. The idea here is to explain why the mind resists those beginnings. So we're going to tie procrastination, avoidance, and uncertainty to kind of how our brain processes and how it processes emotions as well. So I want to talk about this core theme of the avoidance loop. I kind of mentioned it earlier. So when a task, whether it's a big project you have to do, when a task like that, what usually happens is it triggers some kind of internal anxiety. All right. Now, I'm not saying we all have anxiety disorders, but anxiety is a normal function of our bodies. The brain perceives that anxiety or nervousness as a threat. Again, not because it's dangerous, but because it's uncertain and carries potential failure. So our brain perceives that as a threat to our stability.
Right.
Our brain's natural inclination, or our executive functioning part of our brain, tells us to avoid it because there's that risk out there. And then what happens is, when we avoid it, that immediately lowers our anxiety, which then feels like relief. So we've just rewarded ourselves. Our brain's just rewarded us with that avoidance. Okay? So the relief that we experience from not engaging in a task, it lowers anxiety. And that relief rewards the avoidance in the first place.
That's diabolical.
Yeah. And so
That's
the next time
awful.
the next time we hit a task, our brain realizes that avoidance equals relief. And so then it kind of creates an avoidance loop.
I'm just gonna say right now, that's stupid.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, but that is so frustrating that you are rewarding yourself for not doing the thing.
Yep.
Even though you know that doing the thing is going to help you.
Exactly. So every time we postpone that hard thing, whether it's making the appointment, opening the spreadsheet, sending the email, we get a small hit of dopamine. The brain interprets that relief as success, and even though it's sabotaging us in the long game, it catches that short-term relief. And that's the trap of procrastination. It's the short-term reward that reinforces the long-term problem that we have of never starting anything.
For how smart and intelligent our brains are, it sure does have some...
Right. Well, it's important to know that it's a self-sustaining loop, right? We go from anxiety to avoidance to relief to reinforcement of that relief to more anxiety, right? And it just kind of builds over time. Before knowing, we're just a ball of nerves that's just constantly trying to resolve its anxiety through this avoidance loop.
And I've heard a lot too that I've heard it repetitively from people, like, that which your mind feeds on craves.
Right.
So if you don't like reading success books or business books or whatever, like, I just don't want to do that. Well, just start.
Right.
Just start 10 minutes a day, 15 minutes a day. Then you're going to start to miss that if you miss a day. Like, what the heck? I miss my reading. I enjoy it now.
Right. And the cycle, that avoidance loop or that cycle, it literally conditions inertia, meaning it literally conditions us to stay in place and to not progress farther, or progress forward, I should say. And the problem is that the longer we stay in that avoidance loop, the more friction we feel at every start point. Not just a start point for a project, but for any start point that you may encounter. So that avoidance loop is something that we have to really break if we want to move forward in a meaningful way. So, for example, just as an example, I once worked with somebody who had an unopened stack of bills on the counter that had to be paid. This person proceeded to take the bills, put it in a drawer, and close the drawer and walk past and walk away. Oh, and so what ended up happening is every morning, this person would feel a jolt of anxiety and then shove the bill in the drawer, close it, and walk away. And that would immediately cause the person to feel better. And you can kind of see where that's going.
Oh, my gosh.
That micro relief actually lasted seconds, but it kept the loop alive for months, and it led to months of unpaid bills, eventual financial trouble, and all down the road to significant issues. But you can kind of see how it builds on itself over time if you're not careful. There's this other concept of decision fatigue and cognitive overload. And I won't talk a whole lot about those because we've kind of talked a lot about these avoidance loop and so forth, but the idea of decision fatigue, like starting often fails not because of the task itself, but because of the decisions that are embedded within it. Sometimes every decision we make takes energy, and it's draining on our resources. And so this is known as decision fatigue, and it was something that was researched back in 2008. Anyway, it's not that you lack willpower, it's that sometimes we lack the cognitive bandwidth to follow through and make yet another decision. So you know how you get to the end of the day and you're sitting there and you can't decide if you want to start the dishwasher tonight or tomorrow morning, right? Something like as simple as that.
The important things that matter.
To decide. It's because your cognitive bandwidth at that point is exhausted. It's a classic case of decision fatigue.
I see. Okay.
So when the brain is juggling a bunch of unfinished tasks and too many micro decisions, starting anything new feels like standing at the base of like an overgrown trail or something. You can't even see where to step next, and therefore you just kind of throw your hands up and give up at it. That's kind of the idea of decision fatigue,
right?
Or cognitive overload, as an example. So this is sometimes why structure helps a lot of times. Things like checklists, emotional cues, or routines. This is what they do is they offload decisions from your head to the world around you, which preserves energy for then action. Are you following me so far?
Yeah, I actually kind of found, I know we're kind of getting up on time here, so I don't want to take up too much of it, but I've noticed that when I do checklist stuff, it's a double-edged sword in a good way. For one, it gets it off my mind, so I don't have to stress it out about remembering to do the thing. And then in some ways, it's a form of starting that project.
Right. Exactly. Yep. So I want to kind of bring it to a practical close. The whole goal here is to give people tools that they can use on a daily basis. I want to talk about how we can lower the activation energy. And what I mean by that is how can we lower the amount of energy that it takes to start a task? And so there's several different ways we can do that. But there's something called, sorry, I just got distracted by something. We can edit that out. What I want people to remember, the key theme for this part about lowering activation energy is that design beats discipline every single time.
Design beats discipline.
Yep.
Every time.
What do I mean by that?
I don't know.
We've all heard the concept of discipline, right? And we all idolize people that appear to have such strong discipline that they're able to adhere to these very strict routines, whether it's physical fitness or writing a book. Prolific authors, for example, we seem to feel that they have this unbelievably amount of discipline. But what I would argue is that they're actually better at designing their environments to enable them to complete tasks rather than white-knuckling it with their discipline. And sometimes even these really high-achieving individuals will tell you that it's discipline and they interpret it as discipline, but really what they've done is they've made changes to their environment that enables them to complete tasks more efficiently. So when I say that design beats discipline, what I'm trying to communicate is that small environmental or cognitive tweaks change the cost of motion or change the cost of action, if that makes sense.
Josh, is this your way of saying, John, you need to get your office in order?
No, I'm not saying it's your way. You should get your office in order. What I'm saying is that
My office is a mess.
No. What I'm saying is we can do things in our environment, or we can do things mentally that push us more towards action rather than away from action.
Oh, sure.
For example, there's 5 small things that I want to talk to you about real quick that can lower the activation energy to a task. Okay. First is the 20-second rule. Have you ever heard about the 20-second rule?
Yeah.
What is it? I'll tell you.
Go ahead and tell me. I can't.
Right?
The words aren't coming out.
So the 20-second rule is simply looking at a way to reduce friction by about 20 seconds between you and your desired action. So how can you eliminate the 20 seconds between wanting to do something and then starting to do something? For example, how long does it take you to open up a Word document or a Google Docs on your computer to start typing the policy?
Well, I got to open up Chrome.
About 20 seconds, John.
About 20 seconds.
About 20 seconds.
Okay, gotcha. Okay,
right?
Okay.
So that's the idea of the 20-second rule is layout. So, for example, you want to take care of those things before you actually have to start the task.
I misunderstood the assignment.
Yeah.
I misunderstood the assignment. About 20 seconds.
So, for example, exercising. Lay out the workout clothes the night before, right? Not
Right.
a big deal, but when you're trying to start a new habit, lay them out beforehand so you don't have to do that that process of picking out your workout clothes. Open the document well ahead of time. Okay. Preload the project tab in your device or computer just to get those things out of the way. On the flip side, add friction to distractions. So if you have your cell phone in front of you and your computer in front of you and you're picking between opening up the Word document and scrolling on Facebook, your brain is going to pull you and suck you right into looking at Facebook because it's easier. So you need to add friction to the distraction of your cell phone or social media. Put the phone in a drawer. Put it in another room. Delete the social media apps on your phone. Create friction so that it's not so easy just to pick it up and tap it to get that dopamine hit, as an example.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yep. What this does is it leverages choice, what I call choice architecture, which means that we're far more likely to follow the path of least resistance rather than the path of best intention. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
Our brains it's going to be so much easier for us to follow the path that has less friction than the path of where we really want to go. And that's why you hear people talking a lot about, well, I want to go accomplish these things, but it's so hard to get there. Well, why is it so hard to get there if you really want it? It's because we tend to get sidetracked by the path of least resistance. We're people that people and humans in general don't like to put out excessive effort if they don't have to. So it's something we're all constantly battling.
Yeah.
So the first one is the 20-second rule. The second one is implementation intentions. That's a really long word to say. Create an if-then plan. So, right? So if it's 7 a.m., then I start my run, for example. If-then, all right? And what that does is it converts vague goals, such as I want to get in shape or I want to run a marathon. It turns those goals into pre-decisions that bypass the hesitation, right? So rather than it's 7 a.m., oh, now what am I going to do? I'm going to go have breakfast or am I going to go for my run? If you say, if it's 7 a.m., then I start my run, it takes the decision away.
Oh, sure.
And it reduces the barrier.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's implementation intentions. The third one is the 2-minute launch. Do you know what the 2-minute launch is, John?
I do not, Josh. I'm sure you're going to tell me, though.
Yep. Commit to just the first 2 minutes of the task.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Very simple.
Yep.
Right? The getting things done methodology uses this to an extent, and I think is it Gary Allen? I think it is. Regardless, the guy that started the getting things done productivity method, he says if a task takes less than 2 minutes, do it right now. And it's the same thing with the 2-minute launch. So, for example, if you're writing your policy, is to commit to just the first 2 minutes of the task. And then if it's still miserable and awful, you can quit after 2 minutes. Most of the time, you're going to find that your resistance to doing the task will fade once you're in motion. And at that point, continuing actually feels easier than stopping, which is fascinating.
That's very true.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Because your body and your mind enjoys doing things
Exactly.
even though it wants to be, even though it wants to not start things out of fear or the.
Do you know what you just touched on? I didn't know you knew this. The Zeigarnik effect. You knew all about that, didn't you?
This guy knows. This guy knows.
The Zeigarnik effect is essentially that once something is started, the mind wants to finish open loops. The mind hates having open loops, right? It wants to close those off. So even micro starts trigger that follow through because your brain will nag you to get it done.
I had no idea you had that kind of a term.
Yep, exactly. All right, so
that's cool.
20-second rule, implementation intentions, the 2-minute launch, okay? That's just commit to the first 2 minutes of a task. Number 4 is environmental priming. Shape your surroundings to cue a behavior automatically. All right? Keep your tools visible. Remove friction points. Align space with intention. All right? So prime your space, whether it's your workout room at home, your workspace, whatever, your reading corner. Prime those environments with the intention that you want to achieve or with the goals you want to achieve.
So a good analogy would be for those who have gyms at home.
Yep.
Don't put your clothes on it.
Correct. Don't cover your gym equipment with your clothes.
It's not a clothes dryer.
Correct.
It's not that.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's interesting is that I like to say our environments constantly whisper behavioral cues, right? That's why there's actually a lot of work that we do with this every day. When we're at home, there's a big movement, particularly in the last decade, of crafting your home environment to set a specific theme. That's why, is it Magnolia? What are those two really well-known decorators and remodelers? You see them at Target now.
Oh gosh.
Their names are escaping me. But
there's
anyway,
so many of them.
They've made a fortune on helping people craft rooms in their home to fit a particular setting. So for example, in a kitchen, we want our families to feel free to gather around the table, engage in relationship. It's not about eating, it's about gathering. And so we've been able to craft those environments to facilitate gathering. And you can do that with anything, whether if you want to read more, craft a corner in your room that makes reading inviting. Do you want to write more? Craft an environment in your home or in your office that enables you to write. So you want to craft your environment to be able to prime you to do what you're wanting to achieve. And the reason for that is that our environments are constantly whispering behavioral cues, and that curating them is a quiet form of self-coaching.
Interesting. Yep. So if you want to write, probably don't plan on writing at the kitchen counter, or in the basement next to the furnace.
Exactly.
You want to find a nice little corner that has a nice little desk, maybe a nice warm reading lamp or something that is inviting for people to go to sit down and journal, and like, ooh, I'm actually looking forward to being this cutesy little place to write, or that makes sense. Or like if you're an artist and you want to learn how to draw better,
right?
Then you get your pens, your markers, your acrylics, whatever, in a really nice special spot. It's only for that.
Correct. Exactly. That's exactly it. And that takes some intention, but a lot of people find that it's enjoyable to do those kinds of things. So there's a lot of other things I want to talk about, but we're kind of up against time here and want to be respectful of that. So I want to kind of leave people with kind of a mini challenge. All right. I want people to have a take-home experiment that they can try. And that is, I want you to pick one thing you've been avoiding. And for anyone out there to say you're not avoiding things, really?
They be lying.
Everybody on the face of the earth avoids things.
Absolutely.
Everybody.
Yep.
So I want people to pick one thing that you've been avoiding and then reduce its friction by 20 seconds and commit to 2 minutes of motion. And then notice what shifts. Now, I said a lot there. I'll say it again. Pick one thing that you've been avoiding. It can be anything. At work, at home. Reduce the start friction by 20 seconds. So if it's going to the gym, put out your gym clothes so that you don't have to decide what gym clothes to wear. If it's a project on a computer, open up the Google Docs before you have to start to reduce that 20 seconds, all right? So reduce start friction by 20 seconds and commit to 2 minutes of motion or 2 minutes of doing the activity. And then pay attention to what shifts after just those first 2 minutes, okay? In summary, John, movement breeds motivation, not the other way around.
Sure does.
Yep.
Sure does.
Okay. So to kind of wrap it up, I kind of want to talk about the episode for next week that we're going to be talking about, going over. And it's going to be called the friction index. We talked a lot about friction today. We're going to just deep dive more into how to find and remove invisible resistance points, because sometimes we don't even know they're there. So we're going to talk about how we can identify those and eliminate them to hopefully make the science of starting even easier.
I like the sound of that.